I walked away from the church when I was 8 years old. I used to go with my stepmother, who was a Roman Catholic, and go sit through those endless Latin masses, which were kind of cool in a sort of Wagnerian way. But outside of that, I was bored out of my mind. And all I would just sit there and look at Jesus on the cross and say, I'm not sure how this works out, where this is a good thing that he ends up on the cross. That took me a while to sort of sort that thing out. Um, I didn't really come back to God probably until my late 20s, early 30s, when I hit a point of spiritual crisis. I was suicidal. I was wildly successful at a very young age, and I didn't know what to do with myself because I was miserable. I was in a terrible relationship. We all know what that feels like. And I found the one thing that wouldn't abandon me, which was God, in sort of very loose quotations, like, what is God and how do I fit into this picture?
Wow.
And thus began a very long spiritual journey, which I realize now started in my childhood, but I didn't know that's what it was. So when I had those quiet moments, I had a very abusive home, but it started to quantify into something concrete in the my late 20s, early 30s. Then I went down a very, very heady path of spiritualists, occultists, astrologers, psychics, which I still love. I don't have anything negative to say. That became part of my journey, and then eventually round itself around into something which I would say most is aligned with Gnostic Christianity. I see Jesus Christ as a supreme teacher, and as somebody who wants always to be a student, I don't know why you wouldn't go sit yourself at the feet of someone, whether it be Buddha or Jesus, Gandhi, even, where we can learn something about
Yeah.
love and compassion.
Well, listen, as a rock star reaching the fame status that you're at, I do think it's very rare that you are outspoken about your faith and that you are unapologetically Christian. I think that's very rare in today's society.
And performing Beguiled, please welcome the Smashing Pumpkins.
Swallow how the serpent of many tags and faces.
Someone listening to this for the first time who may have been watching my show for a long time and not be familiar with you, they would notice the quality of your voice. Where does that come from? I mean, the nature of your voice?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is it created, or
no.
it's just that's your natural voice?
Yeah, that's my father's voice is actually higher than mine. My father was a singer too, and it's just I have no. I mean, you can hear sitting here talking to me. I have almost no bass in my voice. I mean,
why? None. Huh?
It's this freak of nature thing.
Well, funny you mention that, because in my travails here recently with being ill, I had to go see some voice doctors to try to be able to sing. And the doctor in L.A. Did the thing where he ran a camera down my throat to look at my vocal cords. And I've probably seen 4 or 5 of these people through the years. And he's the top guy in L.A., and his walls are littered with people far more famous than I am. He took some video of my vocal cords and slowed the video down and said, "Oh, this is really weird." And when anybody says that to you at a doctor, you go, "Okay, what does that mean? This isn't going in the right direction." And he said, "You have the voice box of a 9-year-old boy." He said it's a weird anomaly that certain singers have, and they tend to be rock singers. And I said, okay, well, what does that really mean? And he named some other famous names who have a similar thing. I don't feel at liberty to say who those people are. He said it means you can sing high at power without it going into falsetto. He said that's why you can sing rock all night, because you literally have the voice of a child, but you're an adult male. It's very strange. No one had ever told me that. But it does explain that ability to be able to rock sing at a high level and not have to break into falsetto, because as everyone knows, at some point when you're a teenager, your voice breaks. When my voice broke, I thought, oh, it's over, because I had this really kind of angelic voice. I was basically a soprano when I was a child. I guess mezzos. There's a name for it that when males are sopranos, there's sort of a weird opera name for it. So when my voice broke, I thought, oh, and my voice got really weird. My voice was more in my throat, and if you listen to early Smashing Pumpkins recordings, my voice sort of sounds like it's more in my throat.
My name is William Patrick Corgan. I am the lead singer of the Smashing Pumpkins and an occasional poet, entrepreneur, author, raconteur. You could say I had a difficult upbringing. Physical abuse, child abuse, psychological abuse was seen as a necessary part of parenting. Well, I think the abuse that I went through as a child sort of encouraged my creativity, because I had to figure out a way to survive in order to deal with the outside circumstances. When I developed a keen sense of imagination to sort of take myself away from it. So I suppose that might be the beginning of being an artist. Somewhere around age 7 or 8, there was a test in school. They played 3 tones, beep, 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 and you were supposed to say whether the middle of the 3 tones was higher, the same, or lower. It's 120 questions. I remember it very clearly. And a week later, they called my parents in the office and they said, your son has scored the highest score ever in the state of Illinois. In fact, it's so high that we want to test him again because we think it was a fluke. I was tested again and I got a higher score. And so the principal told my father, your son is most likely a musical savant. He needs to go into music instruction immediately. I took the paper home to my father, and my father took one look at it and said it's too expensive and threw the paper away. My father was a musician, so I grew up in sort of an alternative lifestyle. With a lot of alternative ideas, drugs, and things like that. My core family didn't fit into the culture we lived in. And then abuse made me feel even more alienated from what was going on. Plus, a lot of kids around me were being abused as well. So you didn't think, well, I'm different. I think like a lot of people who came from a lot of abuse, you create this immense internal landscape or something, you know. Public life came into my life that it all kind of came back out. I cut myself, I stayed up all night, you know, I did things with sleep deprivation. I thought the thoughts in my head were mine alone. I thought the feelings I was having were mine alone. Mm-hmm. And I was raised to believe that those kinds of thoughts were weak. There seemed to be this thing that started to happen where music took on a greater and greater voice, seemed to synergize everything that I was looking for that I wasn't getting from my home life. There was a band like Rush over here, or Iron Maiden over here, or Black Sabbath over here. That showed me there was a place to go to, and I created in my own way a mythical destination point.
It doesn't really bother me anymore because I feel like they're talking about somebody else. So for a while I kind of played with it like a character. I think Bob Dylan was a master at sort of doing similar things, and now I just have no interest. I'm not interested in feeding a fake narrative.
You see now the brilliance of a Freddie Mercury or a John Lennon at almost a higher level, a higher octave of the way they brought people together. And so in the past you would think, oh, he's a good singer, write good songs, we come together. No. They're like saints or shaman. They bring people together on this level that the people in the crowd can't even understand until years and years later. Because you would think, how come we can't make another Freddie Mercury? Well, there's only one, right? Yeah. One John Lennon, one Bob Dylan. So you realize these men are sort of, and women too, they're sort of holy in a way, in that they unify, they break down these cultural bullshit ideas. You know, oh, you're from Colombia, I'm from America, we can't.
So what are you exploring now?
God. A big American magazine was doing a thing called The Future of Rock. Yeah. And you know, they asked 50 artists, what's the future of rock? And my answer was God. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, God is the third rail in rock and roll. You're not supposed to talk about God, even though most of the world believes in God. It's sort of like, don't go there. I think God's the great unexplored territory in rock and roll music. And I actually said that. I thought it was perfectly poised. And of course, they didn't put it in.
Well, what would you say to Christian rockers then?
Make better music. Personally, my opinion, I think Jesus would like better bands, you know? Hey, Christian rock, if you want to be good, stop copying U2. U2 already did it, you know what I mean? There's a lot of U2-esque Christian rock.
Sure.
Bono and company created the template for modern Christian rock, and I like to think Jesus would want us all to evolve.
Yeah.
Dumb cars and...
Well, it's also, you reach such a high level that there's nothing above that. Like,
I have the antidote. My manager, who was, you know, we were with the Metallica guys at the time. He called me on like a Wednesday or something, and he said, I can't say for sure, but more than likely, based on the calls we're getting, you're going to be #1 this week, meaning Melancholy. And I literally said, is there a position higher? Yeah. Like I couldn't process that there wasn't like another step.
You couldn't keep going.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I always wondered. Like when you reach a certain level and you're selling out these giant arenas and you're one of the biggest bands literally ever. You're like one of the top 100 biggest bands of all time, right? Arguably. where the fuck do you go? Like, it had to be this
Madness.
weird. Yeah, I would imagine
go
that
mad.
madness is the only option.
Madness. And then as I emerged as sort of the auteur and the big mouth in the band, and maybe the person who was most willing to be controversial or whatever, we'd get in a room with journalists and they would just talk to me. But I was like, sure, put me on the cover. Power corrupts, man.
Yeah.
We'll crack your books, young pagans. 'Cause like you, I was hatched.
You know, what success looks like. You know, you use the term InfoWar, you know, right? So what is victory in the InfoWar? Right now, at some point, just resisting seems like victory because there's so little dissent. Most people are like, how do I get out of the trailer park? Right. They don't have time to debate the meaning of a word, you know what I mean? Or a symbol. They just don't have the brain space for it. They just want to get out. Like getting out, it's like the survival instinct. 30 days around America. So we're in Tower Hill, Illinois, and I saw this driving down the road. It's another Masonic temple, but this one's kind of all run down. Roof's caved in. Sort of mythos of secret societies is a connection to Egypt and ancient. So a lot of times you'll see this kind of Egyptology type vibe in the architecture. There's the Freemason symbol at the top. It's the thing with the G. Ceiling's all blown out.
Everybody knows the secret. Everybody knows the scar. I have finally found a way to live in the presence of love.
A lot of times these places that have stages in them for performances and occultic rites, so that's what I'm trying to see. It's like first they ignore you, then they try to destroy you, then they try to co-opt you or buy you in, and then they claim you. And I think that's a really good guide for anybody to look at any public figure. I don't care who they are, an actor, a playwright. That system does come into play at some level. And I think that until that system is eradicated, there's a struggle there that taps a key human resource, which is innovation, and sort of puts it through something that is ultimately serving somebody else's interest. And I think that you have books that is it The Fountainhead or the Ayn Rand, where she basically talks about that particular blueprint. And I've read interesting information to suggest that she was Illuminati and she was expressing some sort of other deeper blueprint. Where you turn the corner on this is not to be afraid of the ideas. You take the ideas onto your own table, you discuss them with your family, your wife, and then you make your own decision.
Exactly. Don't let somebody else make the decision.
That's it. I'm not here to advocate your position or my position. I'm here to advocate the concept of liberty.
I agree with you. That's why the system is panicking and throwing out all the stops. And I found with those that are even partially awake, the acceleration of the tyranny is only waking them up faster.
Any general is going to calculate his risk versus his reward. Whoever's running those systems, whether they're benign, conscious, unconscious, whether it was the Soviet eras or the Nazis or the Khmer Rouge, at some point they have to make a decision. If we don't come in and kill all these people or wipe all these people out or suppress this particular idea, it's going to get out of control. If you're willing to engage in the idea that there's a controlling force that wants something to happen and it's negative, right? I'm on the side that believes that ultimately that ruling force wants the least amount of trouble. And the least amount of trouble is to keep people opiated, stupid, uninformed, and believing a narrative which is really simple.
Yes.
Good guy. I have a wrestling company, right? What do? Good guy, bad guy. You watch CNN, you watch Fox, good guy, bad guy. Dumb, right?
They go, you read the New York Times? We thought you were right. Like suddenly I was this intellectual. And I try to look at everything. This is all sorted to different psychology types. I also go to Defense One and read what the Pentagon's being told.
And nobody wants to admit that they're being fooled. What's the old carny term? They're marks. It started in the carnivals in the 1900s. We're going to stage a fight. We're going to get the local yokels to believe that the kid from the sticks is going to fight the big guy, and if he can beat him, and that's how professional wrestling started. Believing that what you were witnessing was real.
And you suspend disbelief.
Yes. Well, that's what we have. We have a world of suspended disbelief. you know, as long as we're willing to try to understand that the narrative's being narrowed, if we're willing to be awake and listen to our own being in there, and whether they agree with you or not, that is the revolutionary concept. That is the thing that leads to the victories that all of us want to have. A happy planet, a safe planet, a green planet, whatever.
It's an info war. It's a fight in our minds, not physical.
If we're willing to believe that there's somebody standing there behind a curtain that wants bad things to happen, if they had their druthers, my guess is they don't want any trouble. It's far easier if everybody just gets in line and watches the same TV programs and just it all dumbs itself down and it ends up looking like Brave New World. Take this, be quiet, go to your job. People will say, oh, what do you watch on TV? I said, I don't watch anything except a few sports because I can't stand to watch the American male be, whatever they've turned the American male to.
Castrated.
That's a good word for it. Let's say there's something cataclysmic, worthy of knocking all the pieces off the board, worthy of shutting down the internet, worthy of silencing any dissident voices, even ones that would be considered mild dissident voices, like has happened in other historical moments of tyranny, right? And every time it was the same justification. We're doing this for the motherland or the fatherland or the excuse will exist. It's what the populace does in that moment that will determine whether it's going to be 50 more years worse. I would like you to see you broaden the message and bring in people who can speak to this kind of, whether it's a historian, I mean, maybe once a week, it could be a special feature, a historian, bring in people from the Catholic Church, bring in Buddhists, bring in Native American elders, ask, how do you guys view this? And maybe the message of other enlightened thinkers really only reaches people who have enough educational background or cognitive background to recognize that it's a good argument. Right? A lot of people are raised on junk food and Gilligan's Island and probably don't have the, I'm not saying they're stupid, but they don't have the intellectual capacity because they've never been in that situation to have to think like that. A lot of lower classes, which I come from in my family background, they're predicated on survival.
But what is the common stitch there? Free speech. Once we give up free speech in this country, it is over.
And he's a really smart guy, one of the smartest people I've talked to, not just in music or entertainment, but period. And Billy Corgan has actually taught me quite a bit about perspectives and how to see the world, and has helped me mature some. And I think that's why, out of the blue,